Alright then, welcome back to a new video. So tonight I've been trying to fix or recover, so to say, broken or somewhat dead DDR3 sticks, mainly Elpida Hyper based DDR3 memory. So it is known that you can recover broken DDR3 sticks by manipulating the memory size itself. So for example, if you have a 2 GB memory stick like this one over here, so this is a 2 GB memory stick with memory chips on both sides. So this is a 2 GB stick. Each chip is 128 megabytes. There are 16 chips in total, so 16 times 128 equals 2 gigabytes. And all of these high-end Elpida Hyper based DDR3 memories, meaning like Corsair Dominator GT 2000 Cas7, Dominator GTX2, they are exactly the same size as that example stick over there. So 2 gigabytes per stick and 16 chips in total, so 128 megabytes per chip. I have many sticks of those that don't work, over 10 I think, and I have been trying to recover them by either lowering the density, so making the memory stick lower in total size, but by not turning off the chips themselves. So I can, using very known programs, I can drop the memory capacity per chip down from 128 megabytes down to like 64 or even 32 megabytes. So I managed to drop the memory stick size from 2 gigabytes down to 1 gigabyte or even 512 megabyte. I even accidentally dropped the memory stick size from when I was aiming for 512, but I accidentally made a stick 128 megabytes. So that was 8 megabytes per chip. With some sticks it helps, but on some of the memory ICs are practically just dead, damaged, so to say. So you can only make the stick working as a single-sided stick, so single rank or one rank. That means that only half of the memory chips are being used, so only one side is being used. That is fine if the stick works, but single-sided memory stick always has less performance compared to a dual-sided memory stick. So just bear that in mind. So if you get it working, if I get a Dominator GT 2000 Cas7 to work, the performance will not be same compared to what it would be if the stick was in working condition, the same as new. So here we have a Dominator GT 2000 Cas7, which didn't work at all when I received it, and now it's running in the operating system as a single-sided memory stick. And the hardest part for this whole process is that, of course, that if they are broken we cannot post them at all. So we have to make changes to the so-called SPD of the memory stick on the fly. So we have to post the system or turn on the system with a working memory stick, and then we install the broken memory stick on the fly. So just before the operating system starts to load. So that is a risky process. I mean, plugging the memory in to the motherboard while the system is running. So that could, at least in theory, cause damage either to the memory itself and or to the motherboard as well. So if you wish to try this, I recommend you use a motherboard and a CPU that you can afford to lose. So here we have, if you open CPUz, we can see we are running DDR3 1024 megabytes, single channel, as we only have one memory stick plugged in, and these are the JEDEC standards, so not the XMP. XMP would be 2000 Cas7. And in SPD we have Corsair CM, so Dominator GT 2000 Cas7. Here are all the XMP settings, and look, ranks single, module size 1 gigabytes. So now the stick is working in single-sided mode, so only half of the memory chips are being used, and I'm pretty sure the stability is alright in SuperPi 32M, for example. Of course, we are not testing the real like aimed defaults of this stick at the moment, but well, compared to how it was before this, it didn't post at all, and now it posts, and it can even run SuperPi 32M. When talking about performance, at least in theory, you should be able to get the same or close to same performance if you use 4 individual memory sticks, if they are all single-sided, compared to 2 memory sticks that are dual-sided. So if you can reach the same clock speeds with 4 individual DIMMs, then your overall performance should be close to the same. So even if you can make a completely broken memory stick a single-sided stick, that's already a small victory in itself, if you understand me. So I can show you how to do this. So the program you need for this purpose is Read and Write Everything. I think you could use Thaiphoon Burner as well, but it's much easier. At least for me, it was much easier to use Read and Write Everything. So before you start this, you have to get a motherboard and CPU which you can afford to lose, so that they can die in this process, but it's very unlikely that they will die. So far I have been plugging these memory sticks on the fly to the system for a few dozen times already, and no issues whatsoever. But just saying, so don't use your best gear for this process, and get some practice memories first. So I have 4 of these very basic 1333 MHz 999 memory sticks, but these are all of these 4 sticks are dual-sided, and they are 2 GB each, so they are pretty much the same as the Corsair Dominator GTs in each way. Same amount of memory chips, and the chip size is the same, so 16 memory chips on each stick, and each chip is 128 megabytes, and that means 2 GB sticks. But yeah, so I will show you how to do this. I will take another Corsair Dominator GT, which I haven't fixed yet, or well, attempted to fix yet, and we can do it together. But I really want to use 2 hands for that plugging in process when I plug the module in. So just saying. So let's get going. Okay, so now we have 1 stick of bulk DDR3 memory in the 4th slot. We have a very bad E8600 in the CPU socket. We have very simple graphics card, and this board is Asus P5 E64 Workstation Evolution. So this is quite a good motherboard overall, but it's one I could afford to lose. Of course I don't want to, so this is an LGA 775 motherboard with X48 Express chipset, so very good motherboard back in the day. But so the way to do this is that we will post the settings with a working stick of DDR3 memory, and once we are between the post process and the operating system boot, we will then install the not working DDR3 stick to the first channel. So yes, plugging memory in while the system is running might sound weird, but that's what we will do. It will work just fine, and the operating system can see and read the details of that just installed memory stick, and we can flash the SPD to that DDR3 stick, and then we can try to boot them. Now if your memory stick is not posting, it's quite unlikely that you can fix it by just dropping the density. So making, by not turning off any chips themselves, so just by reducing the capacity of each chip. But of course that is the way you want to try first, because you want to keep, or in best case you would like to keep both of the ranks, because dual rank or dual-sided memory stick always has better performance than single-sided stick. But of course, even single-sided stick compared to a not working stick is of course a better result. So then you can just use 4 individual sticks instead of instead of 2. So but the same. So now I will turn on the system and I will try to show how to plug a memory stick in. Okay, so now it's running with one working stick. Well, of course I have done tests with this DDR3 stick before, trying with the Dominators which I wish to get back to working. So this stick actually only has 512 megabytes of memory. It has both sides still active. So now the stick has 32 megabytes on each chip. So 32 chips, so 32 megabytes per chip times 16 is 512 megabytes. So I will save and exit the stock settings, and after the post process, just before it tries to go to the operating system, we will install the Dominator GT memory stick. So we have it ready over here. It will be very hard to do with one hand, so this would be much better to do with both hands. But after the post process, so now it's completed. See, installed on the fly. And now we land on the desktop. So, and I will show you. So we landed on the desktop, installed one memory stick on the fly. So when we open CPUz, we can see E8600, Wolf Jail. Mainboard is P5E64 Workstation Evolution from Asus. Memory, we have DDR3 2560 megabytes installed, single-sided. So we have 512 megabytes of working DDR3 memory, and we have 2 gigabytes on the Dominator GT, which we just installed. If we open Task Manager, we can confirm that by looking at the physical memory total. So 523 megabytes. So that's our working memory. So the extra 2 is just like in non-working state because it hasn't been installed during the post process. And when we check SPD tab on the CPUz, we can see slot 1. Slot 1 is the module which we installed on the fly. So it's Corsair Dominator GT 2000 Cas7 and the XMPs 2000 MHz 78720 1.65 volts. This is the older revision of Elpida Hyper DDR3 memory IC that's on that stick. So it's the Elpida Hyper MHN-E. So it's one that tends to die over time, but some are still working. So how we try to flash this stick? So we open read and write everything. We can actually close the task manager, and we go to SPD, which is over here, dim SPD, and A2 is the first stick. You can confirm it by looking at the part number over here. So it's a 2000 Cas7 GT from Corsair. So you have 2 options here. A2 is the first channel, which has the broken stick, and A6 is the working channel. Now you can find all the information for this thing from online, but 04, so the byte 04 stands for memory chip density. 02, so hex number 02 on this means that each chip will be 128 megabytes. If we lower this to 01, so we remove that and change to 01, now every chip will have 64 megabytes. So now if this did post, we would have a memory stick with 32 megabytes, 64 megabytes times 16, so 1 gigabyte memory stick. So both ranks or both sides would still be in use. So now only the size per memory chip has come down, but this byte number 5 setting is tied to the density setting. So you need to have correct setting on the byte 5 when you make changes to the byte value 4. This byte value 5 or byte 5 setting affects the columns and rows of the memory stick or the DRAM. Good setting for 01 is changing the value from 11 to 09. You can find information about this from Google, but if you have incorrect setting here, it will just not post. Now the 07 or the byte 7 determines how many ranks are being used. 09, so value 09 here means that the memory stick will be running in dual rank, so dual sided. And if we remove that one over there, it will become 01 or 0 and 1, and this would be single sided memory stick. So the most likely way that you can fix a memory stick is that you can just drop one of the ranks off, and then the memory stick will become a single sided memory stick, and then it will work. So if you cannot fix the memory stick by lowering the density, lowering the capacity per chip, then you can just revert the settings of the byte 4 and byte 5. So come back to how they were and just change the byte 7 setting from 09 to 01 so that it will become a single-sided memory stick, and then just use it like that. But of course, better end result will be if you can fix the memory stick by lowering the density, because we want to keep both ranks running for overclocking. Now you can even make the memory stick as 512 megabytes. So if we lower the byte 4 from 01 to 00, the memory stick will have 32 megabyte sized ICs, and that's the minimum of DDR3. You cannot go lower than that. Officially 64 megabytes per IC is the lowest, but you can actually go down to 32. And so far for this setting, the best value on the byte 5 when I tried was 06 or 03. That both of them resulted in 512 megabytes. When I put value 05, so I can show you. So when I put 05 over here, the memory stick became 128 megabytes, but that's of course too low, because then you will run out of memory even in Windows XP. So for 512 megabytes so far, the best were 06. So by putting a value of 1 in the bytes 2 and 1, that results in 06, and that will be 512 megabytes if you have the byte 4 over here as 00 or 0 and 0. But 3 worked also, but I'm not absolutely sure about the difference between the two. They could have some different performance, but just try first by lowering the density. So make a 2 GB memory stick, a 1 GB memory stick with both ranks enabled. If that doesn't work, you can try 512 megabytes, and if that doesn't work, then you just have to make the stick a single-sided memory stick, and that will often work without dropping the density at all. So let's try this now. So we have 1 GB without dropping the ranks, and now we will write the SPD, and it will change when we shut down the system and reboot. So now it's changed, and we can already see when we open CPUz that the change is in place. So see, the total memory size already dropped by 1 GB, and if we go to SPD tab, slot 1, Corsair Dominator GT, we have 1 GB now, but dual rank, so both sides being enabled. So now we just have to shut this down, remove the working memory stick, and just try to reboot, but it's quite likely that this will not work, so it will just fail on post, but you get the idea anyways. Okay, now the other stick has been removed. I just cleared the CMOS because one side effect of many of the 775 motherboards is that it will automatically try to run the XMP. So you will only run those safe speeds like 1333 MHz, so the JTX standards after a CMOS clear. We don't want the motherboard to run any XMP now. We will do that later. So CMOS has been cleared. And nope, it doesn't work. So we have D4, D4. D4 stands for failed. So now we can pretty much say that we can make this stick working by lowering the rank. Well, that's the likely situation. I will try to drop the density even more. Yeah, so far this hasn't been very fruitful. I managed to find one stick that can work well as a slave stick. So it doesn't work that well, it doesn't post it well on its own, but it works well. It's even stable as a slave stick with other stick. So one again. Yeah. Hard to do that with one hand, but it does work. And I found out some settings that have quite big impact on this overall process. So let's check CPUz. So yeah. So let's open read and write everything, SPD. So yeah, this doesn't work. So far, how I found out was that the correct setting. So if you wanted to make a DDR3 stick, 512 megabyte stick as dual-sided, the correct settings would be 00 on the byte number 4. Wait, so 00. Then correct column and row byte for 512 megabytes would be just 01. So 01, done, and just a normal 09. This is the byte 7 setting is bound to the overall layout of your memory stick. So 09 means dual rank with 8 memory chips on each side. Then like 08 would stand for dual rank but 4 chips on each side, because there are different types of memory sticks out there, like laptop memories and so on. They have a bit different overall layout, but this is like the common. So dual rank, both-sided memory stick with 8 chips on each side. And what I also found was that for correct memory performance, your memory sticks have to match each other, and especially the byte 5. So if you have one stick that's normal, so you have so it's normal, so it has well, normal init weight, so it's a 2 GB stick, so it has 128 megabytes per chip, and you have another stick that has been reduced to 64 megabytes per stick, but it's also dual-sided, so you have 2 GB dual-sided stick, and other stick is 1 GB dual-sided stick. The overall memory performance will be terrible in many programs like SuperPi 32M. They have to match each other. So if both of the memory sticks have been lowered to 1 GB dual rank, so dual-sided but 1 GB total capacity, then the performance will be very, very great, as it should be. So just bear that in mind. So if your other stick can only work as 1 GB dual rank, you have to lower the other one, so even the working one, to 1 GB dual rank to have correct performance for overclocking use. And even for daily use, I don't see any sense on doing this if you have mismatched memory capacity and capacity wise. I think you can safely mix like dual-sided and single-sided stick if they are similar. So even if you have like 02 here, so you have 128 megabytes per stick with correct column and row setting on the byte 5, and even if you just make this stick single-sided like this, then you will have correct performance once again. So if you have, let's say, you are running a 2-channel motherboard, so you have 2 dual rank sticks on each, you have one dual rank 2 GB stick on each channel, and then you populate like 2 extra sticks that are single-sided, but same chip capacity and column and row setting, you should have correct performance. So this is very important, so do not just mix just like random sticks together. So or you will see very bad negative impact on overall performance. But I will try this stick one more time, so I will make it. So the easiest way, if you have a completely non-working stick, the easiest way to test it first is to make it a single-sided stick with lowest capacity. So if that doesn't work, then it will not work as anything else pretty much, because this will disable 50% of the memory chips that are on the memory sticks PCB, so this gives the best chance on working at all. So if this doesn't work, it will not work as a dual-sided stick, no matter what density or capacity. So 01, 09, 01, this will give, we can check it, so I'll write it and read. This will give us total size 512 megabytes single side, and the column and row thing matches, so we have 13 columns and 10 rows. But so far not very fruitful. So I managed to make 1, I managed to make 2 sticks working as single-sided, and 1 stick works as a dummy one. Then 1 stick can post, or there were some sticks that can post the they can post as a single-sided stick, but they are very, very unstable. So they will just blue screen when I try to boot to the operating system. So that's not working at all, pretty much. So let's try this one. I will turn off power supply, because there is an issue with this board. This board this board will try to automatically load the XMP if there's one present on the memory sticks, and we don't want that to be loaded. So I clear the CMOS, and then I will just take off the working memory stick. Very hard to do with one hand once again. Turn on power supply, D5. Nah, doesn't work. It gives some weird post loop on the debug LED, but I can try the other channel as well. But so far I've been putting memory sticks in on the fly while the system is running for at least a few dozen times now, maybe 50 times in total. So I can definitely say that this is pretty much safe. Of course, I would not do this whole process on a golden motherboard which you cannot afford to lose. But I tried to lower the memory sticks to 512 megabytes dual rank, so both sides being used, and those kind of memory sticks, they do not post at all on X58, for example. X58 memory controller cannot read or cannot run so low capacity memory sticks. So with 775 you have the best chance you have the best chance to run so low capacity memory sticks. So with newer platforms you have a lower chance, I would say. So really this the whole point of this process depends on are the memory sticks really valuable to you, which you attempt to repair. So now this is posting somewhat. We will have an image on the screen. But I would bet that this isn't stable. So yeah, so it's posting with that one stick, and I will press F2, so it will load the safe mode settings. But my bet is that it will blue screen on when it tries to boot Windows XP. But I'm not fully sure. It could work as well. Oh, we did post. So let's open CPUz. So this should be single-sided, yeah. 512 megabytes, single channel. SPD is reading single rank, so single-sided memory stick. Corsair Dominator GT 2000K7. And in performance tab we have 523 megabytes. So let's try. If this can run SuperPipe 32M stable, then it's a somewhat working stick, and I will put this to the side with the other two which I already fixed. Because if it's broken, it will show up as instability very quickly in this test. So I will just let this to run, and if it's stable with this if it's fully stable, then we can already confirm that the memory stick is working to some degree. Then we can try to increase the capacity or the density of the single-sided memory chips to 64 megabytes per chip. So that should give us, I mean, 128 megabytes per chip, so that should give us 1 gigabyte memory stick, but it's still a single rank, because dual rank is definitely not working. But yeah, loop 1. So I will just let this to run, and then I will make an overall conclusion about this whole repair process. Okay, so that's pretty much the end. So I managed to get one stick working as a slave, which I already said, so it works well with I mean in parallel with another stick, but it has some weird issues, so it doesn't post like completely well when on its own, but it's fully stable when it's running together with other stick, so quite weird. Then 3 sticks are fully working in single-sided mode, so just if you are doing this, it's easiest and fastest to just disable one of the ranks. The density per memory chip isn't so important, because if a memory chip is clearly damaged, it will not work at all, no matter if it's running 128 megabytes or 64 megabytes on that chip. But yeah, so this is quite interesting territory. Yes, it's very it might feel very sketchy to install a memory stick into the system on the fly, but it's actually quite safe. So at least 50 times I did it already, and no issues whatsoever on this X48 Evolution workstation motherboard. But this whole SPD editing is quite interesting territory, so you could even make some clear changes to the memory stick itself, and you can change settings which you cannot change in the BIOS environment. So you could achieve things performance-wise by editing these values over here, but it's very hard, of course. So many of these lower-end values here determine like the model number, the XMP profiles, and so on. But yeah, so if you just load a new stick, like a 2 GB Elpida Hyper stick or some other, but of course it depends a lot on what kind of stick you are installing. But if you are installing like dual-sided 2 GB DDR3 stick, you can just keep these at default, so 0 to 11 and so on, and just change the byte number 7 from 9 to 1. So that will make it a single rank stick, and just see if it works. If it works, it will very likely be the same if it's 1 gigabyte or half a gigabyte on that set, on that working side. So just saying. But yeah, so it's already a very good end result that I managed to get 3 sticks working in a single rank mode. So that's already much better than completely dead sticks. and I just have to see if that one stick that works well as a slave, if it works well on the Rampage Extreme. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. So definitely give this a try if you have some damaged, like valuable sticks. Of course, if you only have some damaged like bulk 1333 Cas9 DDR3 that doesn't even have any heatsinks on them, of course, what's the point on messing around? But if you have some like very valuable DDR3, like top binned Elpida Hypers, power chips or similar, you could determine like which chips in the stick are broken. So when you disable either of the ranks, or the one rank, because that's a one sad thing about this whole system, so you cannot choose that which rank is getting disabled. So we could be disabling the working side. So that's one big thing. So I cannot, very sad that we cannot choose which of the sides are being disabled. So we could fault find and see which chips are the ones that don't work. And then if you have two sticks that have one working rank, you could desolder the working chips or the working memory ICs from other of the sticks, and then from the other stick desolder the dead chips, and you could then combine two working ranks into one dual rank memory stick. So that's one thing to take into account. Of course, it requires a lot of very high-end soldering gear and also some skill, but it's something that could be possible to do even at home with right gear and knowledge, like those Brazilian guys who changed the memory chips of a 2080 Ti RTX card. So just saying, so many things can actually be done even just at home. But yeah, so if you like to see this repair process, or well, repair process like, well, a project on getting some completely dead memory sticks to work even partially, then give a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to my channel. And other than that, thanks for watching once again, and I will see you on the next one.